Hello everyone, today I'm here to share with you all of the books I read in June, and it's a lot. I've read 19 books in June. Look, let's be real here. I've said it time and time in these past couple months. I've been reading a lot because of quarantine and at home. You know, school's out. School's been out for a while. We've been at home for a while. So I have a lot of time to read while, I'm playing with my kid or he's swinging, things like that. I'm so lucky to do that. I know not a lot of people are lucky. They still have to go out to work every day. They still have to find sitters and daycares for their child so they can work. So I do not take that for granted whatsoever. So yes, I read 19 books. Do I usually? No. I think the combination, honestly, is with the quarantine at home, also with Kindle. I've been reading so many books on my Kindle, my e-reader. It's been insanity. So just know this is not the norm. I'm usually not reading a lot like this at all, but I'm happy that it's happening. So also, with the past couple months, I'm going to share with you first the NetGalley books I've read, because I like to do a video every single month where I really talk about the NetGalley books I've read recently and really go into them because they are not out yet, and I just like doing its own separate review. So the 4 NetGalley arcs I read this month were Party of Two by Jasmine Guillory. I gave this a 4 out of 5. I really enjoyed it. Then I had You Had Me at Hola by Alexis Dario. Again, 4 out of 5. I really love this one. His and Hers by Alice Feeney, I gave a 3 out of 5. It was okay. It was a mystery thriller. And lastly, How to Fail at Flirting by Denise Williams. I gave a 5 out of 5. I cannot wait to read this one when it comes out, again in December. Now moving on to the books I read that were not on NetGalley. As always with this, I will start with my least favorite, working up to my favorite. Also with these, I'm going to try not to talk a lot about them because there's a lot of books, and I've done a lot of mashup reviews and recent reviews on a lot of these books, probably around 12 of them or so that's a lot, so I'll link them down below. This book is Crave by Tracy Wolff. I gave this a 3 out of 5. If I'm honest with myself, it's probably a 2 out of 5. This, if you can't tell, is clearly a Twilight ripoff. And it is. It's about a girl that moves to Alaska and she goes to this boarding school and she learns maybe something paranormal is going on here. You can guess it. And we have this brooding vampire guy, and it's just very self-aware, I think, but also the plot's really not that great. The characters aren't that great. The romance I did enjoy, but I think you have to go into this not expecting a lot. I read it with Crystal from Crystal Marie Books. We both had a good time reading it because it was funny. It wasn't that great, but I had a good time reading it, and it's long, but it flew through, even though nothing happened. I don't know. It's a series. I will continue on with it. I'd say if you're a really big vampire fan, check it out, but just don't expect it to be amazing, and that's just my personal opinion. Next up, I have And There Were None by Agatha Christie. If you don't know, Agatha Christie is a classic mystery writer. I gave this a 3 out of 5. I enjoyed it. It's very short. I wanted to read an Agatha Christie book. It's basically about these 8 people that go to this island, and they learn that they're getting killed off one by one, and they don't know why, and it is interesting. The ending I thought was really good. It showed that Agatha Christie really does know how to write mystery, but I could see where this was a really big and prominent novel back in the day when it was released, but now I'm it was okay, but I think for a classic mystery, I did really enjoy it. Next up, I have The Marriage Game by Sarah Desai. This is a debut novel, all about a character named Layla who moves back home to San Francisco after a really brutal breakup with her boyfriend Jonas, and she starts to work in the office above her family's restaurant called A Touch of Spice, and it's about her and she learns that her dad has set her up on this site called Desi Match, and where where guys will send them their dating resume, and she decides to go on these dates, appease her dad, and also maybe find love. I did really enjoy this one for the Indian culture. I always love learning more about cultures, and I need to do more of it, but it's definitely a hate to love romance, and I ate that up, but overall, it was okay. It was a solid read, which is why I gave it a 3 out of 5. And I'd say if you're really into the hate to love romance trope, much like myself, I would check it out. Next up is The Player Next Door by K.A. Tucker. I read this on ebook. This is her newest release. I believe it's self-published. This is about a character named Scarlett who starts off in the novel. She is having a hot and heavy relationship with her boyfriend, and it's her senior year of high school, and he breaks up with her suddenly, and she is very heartbroken. He moves on quickly. Things are not great. And now 10 years later, she moves back home and she buys a house and she gets a job, and then she learns that who was her neighbor but the guy that broke her heart 10 years ago, Shane, and he wants to reconnect. He was I changed a lot since I was a teenager, and she's very much not having it. This is obviously a second chance romance book, and I liked it. I didn't love it. Scarlet was just so wishy-washy, like, I forgive you. I don't. I'm still mad about what happened 12 years ago, but I'm not. And I'm just like, which is it? But I mean, I love Kay Tucker's writing and I will read a lot of her books and I need to read a lot of her backlist ones. But again, I like this one. It was a solid one, just not one of my favorites. Next up is The Boyfriend Project by Farah Roshan. This is another debut novel, if I'm not mistaken. In this book, we follow a character named Samaya who learns that she's being like two-timed catfished by a guy she's currently seeing, and she shows up to this restaurant where he's on a date with another girl, and another girl shows up that he's dating, and pretty much all three of these women are like, you're a horrible guy, which yes, he is. And they decide, hey, let's be friends and like, let's have this thing called the Boyfriend Project where we don't need any men. We can focus on ourselves and what makes us happy. Of course, Samaya does that a lot at work because she's in the tech field and she's very smart, and she meets a new coworker named Daniel and things happen from there. I really liked Samaya as a character. She was a woman boss. She knew who she was. She was strong in her field and also talked about a lot about being a Black woman in like the working field and how hard it is to be that. And obviously I don't know anything about that because I'm a white woman, but I loved learning more about it and the struggles that they face. And you know, I don't realize that, but reading books that are about that really opens my eyes to it. So I loved it for that. And she was just such a strong and amazing character. The relationship was super cute. There was some lying going on with it, but again, a 3 out of 5. It was a solid romance book in my opinion. Next up is Song Below Water by Bethany C. Morrow, I believe. I read this one on my Overdrive app on my Kindle because I finally learned how to use Overdrive for my library. Yay! This is a YA fantasy book that honestly reads a lot like contemporary. Please forgive me, I forgot the characters' names. I am horrible, but I have a character that is a Black girl that is a siren, and it's really frowned upon to be a siren. Like, she has to keep her identity as a siren secret because people might kill her. There's just not, it's frowned upon, and a lot of Black girls are sirens. So it's about her learning how to deal with that and also trying to be honest with who she is and that she's a siren and she's proud of being a siren. We also follow her best friend, like, and her sister pretty much, and she is like a mermaid at this kind of, I'm gonna say like Renaissance or kind of just a fair, and she is learning maybe she's not quite human, that there's something going on, but you as a reader have to figure out. And I did enjoy this one. I gave it a 3. It was solid, I thought. I would say my favorite part of it is the two characters. Like, they were BFFs. They were there for each other no matter what. And I really love a book that has such a strong friendship value. Also, this talks a lot about the Black Lives Matter movement, which is very awesome to read about because that's very current right now in our life, as it should be always. And I loved reading about that and how, you know, a lot of these siren women have to really fight for injustice and how it kind of parallels with the Black Lives Matter movement. And I did really enjoy it. The cover is stunning, and this is a debut novel, and I really liked it overall, so I gave it a 3 out of 5. Next up is A Phoenix First Must Burn. This is edited by Patricia Caldwell. This is 16 stories of Black girl magic, resistance, and hope. I buddy read this with Amy and Amy Reads, and we really enjoyed it. I think overall my rating is either a 3 or 4. I can't quite figure out. There were a lot of stories that I really loved in this one. I loved Elizabeth Acevedo, who's surprised. I loved Patricia Caldwell's. I'm pretty sure hers was the vampire one, which I loved. I also loved Danielle Clayton's was a great one, as well as Justina Ireland's, and E.B. Zaboy's were great. There were a few in here that I did not really love, but overall, there was just a plethora of stories. They were all kind of fantasy based. There was one about vampires, which, hello, I love. There's one about these girls that would turn into like literal balls of fire that I loved so much. There was one where it was like a girl had magic back in the slavery times, and it was just a really amazing book, a great YA anthology. So I think overall I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5 because the majority of the stories I read, I really loved in this. Up is Anna K by Jenny Lee, I believe. Again, I read this on Overdrive through my library. This is a modern retelling of Anna Karenina. If you asked if I've read that, the answer is no, I have not, and I probably never will read it. And this is very much, a lot of people compare it to Gossip Girl, which I would very much agree with because it's about these really wealthy people that live in New York and things like that. We follow Anna Kay, and she is an Asian American, and her family's very rich, and she has these really two big dogs. She loves horses, and then she meets this guy, Count Vronsky, I believe, and he's kind of a player, and they fall in love. We also follow a slew of other characters like Anna's brother, Anna's brother's girlfriend, Anna's brother's girlfriend's sister. It's confusing at first, but the more you read it, the more you get invested in it, and it was very addicting. I will say that. At the end, oh my gosh. There is a second book that's coming out. I forget what it's called. I will definitely plan to read it because I enjoyed it. Like, this was a fast pace. I was invested in it throughout it all, honestly. So I liked it a ton. I gave it a 4 out of 5. Next up is The Upside of Falling by Alex Light. This is a YA contemporary book I read on ebook, and this is... a lot of these books I've read so long ago that I've really forgotten a lot about them. It's about two characters. They fake date pretty much, and they fall in love. And it's just the epitome of really cute, adorable YA contemporaries. I loved it. It really reminded me a lot of To All the Boys I've Loved Before, where it's got that sugary, sweet romance that I just literally eat up constantly. So I love this one. And I gave it a 4 out of 5. Another 4 out of 5 is The Escape Room by Megan Golden. I borrowed this from my library. I did read it physically, but I've since had to return it. It's a mystery thriller that was really prominent last year, and I finally read it this year. It's about these 4 kind of business tycoon people that get stuck in an elevator, and it's an escape room, and we kind of follow them as they're trying to get out, and also the secrets that they've had about like their business. And it really reminded me a lot of The Wolf on Wall Street, which I loathe that movie just because of the sheer fact of how horrible the people were and how money just drives you straight up evil. That shows it. This book shows it, because all these people just wanted money, 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 and nothing. Like, the more they got, the more they wanted, the more horrible they were, the more they would backstab and do really wrong things. And it was interesting to read about that and how they came to be that way, and just how conniving and horrible they are, and how money is truly the root of all evil. I really do believe that. There's a lot of evil things in this world. Money is definitely one of them. But this is the type of thriller book, like, if you want to read a book where you like hate all the characters, you're just like, I don't really care what happens to you, go for this one, because you're going to feel that way in this book. But it was addicting. I would honestly like a second book in the series, because the way she left it off, it could happen, and I would like it. So I gave it a 4 out of 5. Also is Megan Golden's new book, The Night Swim. This one comes out in August, and I also give this a 4 out of 5. This one is about like a podcast element into it. We follow a character named Rachel, I believe, and she has this podcast called Guilty or Not Guilty, and this season on her podcast, she's actually following a real life trial that is happening in this really small town, where this girl has said that this guy committed rape on her, and it's the town's golden boy, and the town is split of what to believe. And so Rachel's following the trial like week by week, case, I don't know what you call it, hearing, whatever, and putting it on our podcast. Also, we have this other storyline going on of a death that happened 20 years ago in the same small town, of this girl's sister that said that she drowned, but her sister knows that she did not drown, that she was murdered. So she kind of draws Rachel into this and tries to start telling her, like, I want this solved. My sister was not drowned, she was murdered. So it's all about that. It obviously, if you can't tell, deals a lot with rape. So if that is a sensitive subject, which understandably so, do not read this, but it's very harrowing, that is for sure. But the podcast element with thriller books, I love and will always recommend. This one I thought was really good. I did like this one much more than The Escape Room, but the ending was amazing. Perfection, honestly. I loved it. And to my 3 favorite books of the month, Take a Hit, Dani Brown by Talia Hibbert. This is the second book in the Brown sisters. I don't know exactly what it is. The first book was Get a Life, Chloe Brown. This one we follow her sister Dani Brown, who is a plus-size bisexual English professor with shockingly pink hair, and she is the best. And basically what happens is she gets stuck in the elevator, and the guy that she's friends with, Saphir, saves her. That's the security guard, and they pretty much fake date. And I can go more into it, but this video is very long. They fake date in order to help him with this charity, and of course, real feelings happen. And oh my goodness, we all need a character. Zaf is like the perfect man. He is the softest of soft. He reads romance books, and he loves that, and he loves romance. And Dani was such a strong, sassy, strong woman. I said strong twice, but she is strong, so why not? But I loved it. 4 out of 5, might bump it up to 5. I adored this a ton. If you want some really good romance books, pick any Talia Hibbert book. This is like my 3rd one by her, and I'm obsessed with her books. 2 5 stars of the month. I can't pick, so I'm just gonna put both of them. Home Before Dark by Riley Sager. That's right, I gave Riley Sager book a 5 out of 5. I was obsessed with this. This book is about this character. What is your name? Her name's Maggie. She lived in this really old house called Bainbury Hall when she was young, like when she was 5. And her mom and dad lived there. And it was like everyone said it was haunted. And then one night they just run away, like in the dead of night from this house. And her dad makes a book called House of Horrors all about their like 2 weeks in this house and how haunted and creepy and eerie it was. And Maggie's never believed it. She's like, there's nothing paranormal that happened. And now 25 years later, her dad dies and he leaves her Bainbury Hall. So she decides, I'm going to go back there and figure out what has happened. Like something has happened, paranormal or not, I'm going to figure it out. So it's all about that. Also in this book, we have parts of her dad's novel House of Horror in it. So it kind of coincides chapters. One chapter of Maggie's, one chapter of House of Horrors. And I loved it a ton. It's definitely... A lot of people are like, is this horror, is this mystery? I would say both with some paranormal aspects. I loved it. Definitely a perfect book to read for Halloween, like for sure. 5 out of 5. I was surprised by how much I loved it, but I'm obsessed with it. And then my favorite book of the month, one of my favorites, Clap When You Land by Elizabeth Acevedo. This is her newest release. It's written in verse and it is stunning. We follow 2 girls, one named Camino, one named Yahira. One lives in the Dominican Republic, one lives in New York. Sorry about my lighting, the sun is not working out for me. And they share a dad, and they don't know that they share a dad, much less that they don't even know that each other exist. And then their dad dies on a flight from New York to Dominican Republic, which this book is actually based on the flight, because a flight like that did happen and a lot of people did die from New York to Dominican Republic. And so these 2 girls learn about their dad and who he really is and how he was leading like a double life, and they learn of each other's existence, and it's all about family and race and a lot of other things. And it was such a beautiful book. Like I said, it's written in verse and it is stuck with me. Like I starred, tabs, whatever you want to call it, so many things in this book. I will share one of you that I really enjoyed. Mommy wanted me to be a lady, sit up straight, cross my ankles, let men protect me. Poppy wanted me to be a leader, to think quick and strike hard, to speak rarely, but when I did, to always be heard. Me? Playing chess taught me to be a queen as both, deadly and graceful, poised and ruthless, quiet and cunning. A queen offers her hand to be kissed and can form it into a fist while smiling the whole damn time. But what happens when those principles only apply in a game and in the real world? I am not treated as a lady or a queen, as a defender or an opponent, but as a girl so many want to strike off the board. That's just one of them. Like that, like I keep thinking about that constantly. So I highly recommend any of Elizabeth Acevedo books. Her books never let me down. There you have it. Those are all the 16 books I read. Are you tired of hearing me talk yet? Because I know I am. Ugh. But I would love to hear if you've read any of these, if I inspired you to read any of these, and let me know what you read this month. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.